Hi, I'm Elise and I'm going to present adaptations of humans to starvation and fasting with Victoria. I'm going to do the first part on the normal physiology of our body, and Victoria is going to present the adaptation of the body to starvation and fasting. So let's start. What is starvation and why does it happen? The question of starvation and fasting is often discussed in different cases. In India, Gandhi does a hunger strike for a few days several times to impose his opposition to the corrupt government. Humans starve also for religion reasons as Muslim during Ramadan to lose weight. But starvation is not always a choice, and people from poor countries have to face to the lack of just nutrients, um, and sometimes are just forced to starve in case of famine. So, why do we need to nourish our body? What is happening when our diet is unbalanced or non existent? How the body compensates and adapts itself to survive? So, why do we need to eat? Well, in order to survive, humans require nutrients to respond to its body necessities. As soon that we eat an element, the GI tract will break down molecules thanks to hormones and enzymes to provide energy. This energy is stored as a long chain of glucose called glycogen, and usually in our liver or muscles or as fat called triglycerides. The body, according to the homeostatic principle, maintains a certain glucose blood level which cannot drop under 3.5 millimole per liter. The glucose concentration is regulated by the pancreas, which is just below the duodenum and the stomach. The endocrine function of its late of Langerhans regulates glycemia thanks to the release of two hormones. First, we have the alpha cell produces glucagon, which is released between meals and increase the level of glucose in blood through different pathways. And the beta cell, which produces insulin to decrease the level of glucose in blood during the food intake. So, to be more specific a bit, we have the role of the insulin here, like as I said before, to decrease it's produced to decrease the glycemia in activating different processes. So we have the glycogenesis. So I did a little schema here to show that. So it's in the liver, and it's the transaction, like the transformation to of glucose to glycogen. But we have the reverse process, glycogenolysis. And we also know that insulin activates lipogenesis, which take place in fat tissues, and which is a transformation between, like, from fat acids to triglycerides. And the reverse is lipolysis. There is also the fat acid synthesis, the glucose uptake in fat, muscle, and liver, and the protein anabolism. So it's like a circle. The role of glucagon is completely opposite. So the glucagon is going to just activate lipolysis and glucogenolysis, and then glucagon will release all the storage, like the glucose stored, and produce energy. But another level of regulation exists with GABA, which is a neurotransmitter which is released in the case of hyperglycemia to stop the release of glucagon. In fact, GABA, sorry, it's not really comfortable. GABA is going to just bind here. Calcium, chlorine, sorry, is going to enter in the cell, and then there is going to be an hyperpolarization due to a massive amount of negative charge inside, and the calcium channels close. So the glucagon cannot bind anymore and be released. Be released. In case of low glucose, the liver will release its stored glucose to other tissues, but when its glycogen is exhausted, glucose is made from fat or from the destruction of protein from muscle tissues. So, what is the role of the adipose tissues? So we said that fat could be used as an energy resource with two types of adipose. So we have white adipose tissue, which regulates energy and nutrients management in all organisms by highly coordinated metabolic adaptation. When muscles and other tissues need energy, certain hormones such as glucagon bind to adipose cells and trigger the hydrolysis of triglycerol thanks to the lipase and result in the release of energy-rich fatty acid and glycerol thanks to lipolysis. Then we have brown adipose tissue, which are specialized in the dissipation of energy through the production of heat and plays a role in survival due to the high number of mitochondria. Then we have the food intake, and to regulate that, the brain is involved to send and receive signal. The hypothalamus plays an essential role. So we have the lateral hypothalamus, which is the hunger center, which stimulates food intake, and we have the ventral medial hypothalamus, which is the satiety center, which inhibits food intake. Then the regulation of food intakes is regulated at two levels. So we have at short term with sensorial and nervous and numerous signals, and long term with hormones such as leptin, insulin, and ghrelin. Then via the feeding center in the lateral nuclei of the hypothalamus that we saw before. It receives neural signal from gastrointestinal tract that provide sensory information about stomach feeling. So we have like these little mechanoreceptors which are activated by the food, turn on the ascending vagus nerve, and then this nerve talk with neurons from the NTS, so it's the nucleus tractus salivary, and lead to hormones release. Hormones released by adipose tissues are leptin and give signals as the cerebral cortex, such as sight, smell, and taste via the cranial nerve, just here, and actually chemical signal from nutrients in the blood such as glucose, amino acid, and fatty acid have also a big role in the regulation of the food intake and send a satiety message. And all of those signals influence feeding behaviors. Actually, there are a lot of different other hormones, but it's really well regulated and really fine. It's a fine regulation, so I just decided to choose the main ones because otherwise it was a bit messy. But several hormones inhibit also the food intake, such as the CCK, so it's a cholecystokinin. And in fact, when the meal is rich in lipids, this hormone is released. We also have the PYY336 pass, who pass through the blood and act on the accurate nucleus of the hypothalamus in proportion. It's really well done. It's in proportion of the energy content in the meal, which leads or not to the satiety feeling. How leptin works. So leptin is an anorexigen hormone as well. It is produced by white adipose tissues during a meal. Leptin activates on the POMC neurons the alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, so MSH, which will be released via synapses and will bind to specific receptors as MC4R, which leads to the inhibition of all food intake. Then the ghrelin. So the ghrelin hormone is released when the stomach is empty. It acts on the NPY and the RGRPN neurons to help us to eat. So ghrelin acts in the brain to regulate food intakes, body weight, and glucose metabolism. Both ghrelin and its receptors are widely expressed in multiple regions of the brain, but also in peripheral tissues such as the intestine, pituitary glands, kidney, lungs, heart, ovaries, and pancreatic islet. So this expression in pancreatic islet is consistent with a series of human studies showing increased plasma levels of glucose and decreased plasma level of insulin following ghrelin administration. So it's really interesting. So here is for my part. Thank you for listening.